Hi, welcome to Knit with Hannah. Today I'm going to show you how to count your rows when you're knitting in garter stitch. Hi, welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm Hannah, I'm here with Knitting Natter to help you learn to knit the easy way. And counting rows is something that we have to do, so let's make it easy. It doesn't have to be something that you turn over and over and over in your head so many times that you get really confused. Once you know how to do it, it will be a lot easier. Every single time that you practice it, it will be a lot easier as well. So first things first, if you're not already, do subscribe and hit a little bell for notifications. I'm here every Tuesday, every week with a new video, and if you hit on the notifications bell, then YouTube will let you know when those new videos appear. Right, I will see you after the demo. I'm going to show you how to count rows on garter stitch. I have two different sets of garter stitch here, and I'm going to show you how you count the rows in each of them. This one is just garter stitch, nothing else, and this one has a different stitch underneath it, so we need to work out how to count the rows in garter stitch if we're counting them after we've done something else. So I'll show you that one in a minute, but let's have a look at this one first. This one is actually quite easy to read. What you need to do is have a look at your cast on when you start knitting and see whether there's anything specific you can work out about the cast on that will make it stand out, so you know which part of the knitting is the cast on and which is knitting the rows. Some cast ons will look more like a plain row than others, so just make a note of that. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong. If you're one row out or something like that, it's not going to matter a great deal, but you may want to notice that and just be that little bit more accurate if you want to. Now, on garter stitch, we switch the needles over from one side to the other, and this means that when we're discarding stitches from the previous row, I'll show you that here, when we knit a stitch, the stitch from the previous row has to go somewhere. So that is usually certainly always on a knit stitch, it's dropped to the back of the needles. That's what we're looking at when we see these lumps here. And we're looking at this yarn that moves over the row as well in between the stitches. So each one of these little pairs of bumps is a row, and I'm just going to undo those stitches so I can show you that better. So we have the discarded stitch and the yarn that's going across, the discarded stitch and the yarn that's going across the row. And we can very simply just count these blocks, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, because we switch the needles over from one side to the other and we knit on both sides, you also need to count them on the other side as well. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 rows on one side and 8 rows on the other, which means we've knitted 16 garter stitch rows altogether. That's it. That's all you need to know. Count the rows on both sides and then add them together. They're going to be either the same or one row different. Okay, so let's have a look at how we count stitches, how we count rows when you've been doing another stitch beforehand. This example gives stocking stitch beforehand, which is about knitting one row knit and one row purl. When we count the garter stitch above it, we just need to make sure that we don't count any of the purl rows. So it's very obvious here on this side that we haven't got any purl rows sitting here that we might mistake because it looks completely different. So we can count 1, 2, 3, 4 rows very simply. So make a note of that. That's 4 rows on that side. Now when we look at this side, on the other side of garter stitch, that looks fine, but this is different, but it looks very similar to the garter stitch. The one thing you can do to make yourself really notice which is the garter and which is the purl is looking here. We've got a little ridge in between them. This is where the stocking stitch ends and where the garter stitch begins. So we can do that really, really easily. There's kind of a gap in between each row here, and they're all very close together at the base here. So we can also count 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 rows of garter stitch on this side and 4 rows on the other side. And you're going to notice this kind of gap if you're knitting either moss stitch or ribbing or anything else before you use garter stitch as well. So just be aware of that. That's when you then start counting your garter stitch rows. I hope that was helpful for you. You can now count your rows in garter stitch and you can set yourself up with all you need to carry on knitting through the pattern. This is a beginner's technique. You need to learn how to count rows and you'll see it over and over again in patterns. But if you feel that you want some more beginner ideas, then I have a whole beginners playlist, Beginner Knitters 101. If you go over to my channel page, Knit with Hannah, then you'll find the playlist right there on the homepage for you. So you can just go through that, have a look and find out lots and lots of other beginner tips and tricks. All sorts of things you need to know as a beginner knitter, and I've got loads of videos there to help you. Right, thanks for joining me today. I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Happy knitting.